Now, of course, here at Weekend Breakfast and around the country, Australians love a good joke, and ribbing is actually a bit of a national sport from which no one can escape, even our politicians. So it's no wonder that political satire is a popular form of entertainment, and a certain US president is often the target of many jokes.
The FBI raided my home looking for presidential documents. They broke into my safe. They took away my toilet where I kept all my documents. I'm building my presidential library down here in Florida, Paul. It's going to be beautiful. And all the documents from my presidency will be on display in the toilets.
So you haven't done anything wrong?
It's a witch hunt, if you want to know the truth. A one-sided witch hunt.
A one-sided witch hunt?
Yes, it's disgusting. There were very fine people on both sides of the witch hunts in Salem.
We love a good political satire, don't we? Yeah. And with the elections in the UK and the US looming, and an Australian federal election on the horizon for next year, we can expect more of that on our TV and digital screens. Well, in fact, it's one of the subjects of a new book entitled The Moral Dimensions of Humour, exploring the role of comedy in shaping our societal norms and political discussions. Well, joining us now is co-author Mark Rolfe, who is also honorary lecturer at UNSW. Mark, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. Good morning. There does seem to be a license around politicians, isn't it? I mean, there seem to be fair game when it comes to humour, and sometimes it's cruel humour as well. Why is that?
And it doesn't elicit much sympathy from us, does it? And I think because there's roughly a 300-year tradition of slagging off, of ridiculing, of deriding politicians, going back to the early 18th century in Britain, going back to Jonathan Swift and Gulliver's Travels and that book. So we started there, and we've carried on ever since. And yeah, we think they're fair game, as well as a lot of other stereotypes as well.
Break that down for us. Why is that?
Well, look, you can see in that clip there that Sean McAuliffe is having a go at Donald Trump as a fabulist and as a liar. And that's not breaking news where Donald Trump is concerned for many of us. Now, in that respect, McAuliffe is really just banging away at that old tradition of having a go at politicians, and in the process of ridiculing the lies, really reinforcing the idea that we should be getting honest politicians, not corrupt politicians, as far as the stereotype goes. Yeah. So that's something that we're ready to believe about all politicians. They all lie. So in that respect, comedians and other humourists are really playing with an easy target to persuade us.
It is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, politicians, leaders of the world are a prime target for particularly talk show hosts and political satires. There was a time when talk show hosts actually shaped political ideology, and there was a time when, when it was Trump versus Biden, you had all the late night talk show hosts in the US, and there were all these think tank type pieces that said, well, these are the people that's going to be shaping the election. Is that still true today?
I think so. What's changed in the last 10 years of what you're describing is that there are now late night show hosts on the right. There's not just Stephen Colbert and John Oliver and Jon Stewart. There's also a bloke on Fox News called Greg Gutfeld, who's the equivalent. And he gets ratings, sometimes in excess of Colbert's ratings. So you've got now, not just with Fox, but a variety of media where they have their sort of in-house satirist, where humour is part of news commentary. It's come into that new age of humour is now essential for us understanding politics, as well as a variety of other things, but particularly in politics.
That is interesting, isn't it? Particularly as a lot of people are actually turning off news because they don't want to hear the bad news, but then they're turning to comedians to talk about or get information about political news and who they should vote for in coming elections. Do you see that happening here in Australia?
Not so much. A lot of it has to do with the polarization in America, most of all. I mean, there's always been a bit of a mix of current affairs and politics going back decades. You can go back to the 60s, for instance. But it's come to this lately with polarisation, and what's called negative polarisation or effective polarisation. That means you and I may hate the opposition more than we love our own party. Okay, so that's when all the negative humour, the political satire, can play into that. Now, you talk about the news, people switching off negative news, horrendous news, whatever, but then they switch into negative political satire, which slags off the other side, particularly in America, and it lines up with political identity as well.
Well, we're living in a digital age now, and politicians, want to go viral, but not for the wrong reasons as well. So where does social media and going viral and humour and this political satire fall in shaping our opinions?
Politicians and parties have to be very careful with it. Now, you can see in the UK election, there's a lot of political humour appearing on TikTok and Instagram. Rishi Sunak isn't doing it much. Satire can be dangerous for politicians to play with, whereas an opposition is interested in dragging down the government.
Yeah.
So you see the Labor Party using a lot of satire of Rishi Sunak being out of touch in a variety of ways. And so these short little clips are perfect for negative campaigns in that regard.
We're just watching Clark and Dawson here in Australia. Iconic, of course.
Yep.
Who's doing it best in Australia at the moment?
That's a curveball, thank you, Fausia.
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
Look, it's very hard to beat those two.
Is it TV? Is it social media that's grabbing people's attention when it comes to political satire?
What's changed since those two is social media. So what you've got is the fragmentation going on. So lots of people on social media now indulge in political satire, in humour, generally. So we're not getting the same sort of ratings going on as they got in those days. Not the same sort of attention as in the old broadcasting days. Look, you've got, of course, on the ABC a number of comedians. You've got also up-and-coming ones. Nazim Hussain is big on social media. Aaron Chen. Not so much political humour, but, it's these new avenues coming up with younger comedians that is sort of broadening the landscape in that regards.
Mark, it's a fascinating topic, and do you know what? Let's have you back again when the elections
I'd
are
love
on,
to.
and then we'll have a chat then about
That'd be
political
great.
satire as well.